Well, let's get set to wrap up the offensive side of our position preview series here in 2025 by talking about the big guys up front. Let's talk offensive line. What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back into the Country Roads webcast. Here to continue our position preview series as we approach the start of the 2025 WVU football season. Today, we'll be diving into the offensive line and going to do it a little bit differently. I'm not going to go through and highlight each player necessarily. I will talk a little bit about each one that we have on the roster when I pull up the roster tracker here momentarily. But I think more so than anything, I want to get to kind of the projected pecking order right away as we talk about these guys. Because I think there's about 11 or 12 guys that you'll probably see in the mix, kind of in the rotation on the offensive line. And those are kind of the main ones we want to highlight here. Plus, when you're talking offensive linemen, it's not like we have a ton of stats to run down with each of these guys like we have with some of the other skill position players and tight end position there. So that's kind of what's on the docket for this one. We'll talk offensive line. A lot of new faces, one of the most remade rooms on the roster, revamped rooms, whatever you want to call it. A lot of new faces here on the offensive line we have to discuss, so we'll do that momentarily. But before we do, just a quick reminder, if you would, take a second, hit that thumbs up button, give this video a like, help us out with that crazy YouTube algorithm. That helps this video find more Mountaineer football fans like yourself. And if you're one of those that hasn't yet, be sure, hit that subscribe button, stay up to date on all things WVU football, including Season 8 of the podcast, CRW Podcast, starting later this week. We've got our season prediction roundtable coming soon. We'll go through the schedule game by game, formulate our WVU schedule prediction. So be sure you got that subscribe button clicked so you get that video straight into your feed, as well as the continuation of this position preview series as we flip over and talk about the defense on our next video. Before we do that, we got to hit the offensive line here. So that's what we're going to get into with no further ado. All right, so you can see with the long list why we're not going to do this one exactly the same way and go through and highlight all these players individually. I do want to tell you all the names that are in the room, and then I want to tell you the ones that I think will kind of be the key players that you'll probably see in the rotation this season. But let's start with going from redshirt senior down to the freshman. First up, we've got Tykees Crawford, 6'5", 325. He was here for the spring. One of several SEC offensive linemen that West Virginia has added via the portal. He comes over from Arkansas, so we add Tykees Crawford in. And then, of course, also here for the spring was Kimo Makaneole, who comes over from LSU, which he's an interesting story because he was highly regarded coming out of high school as an offensive lineman, but for whatever reason, LSU flipped him and was trying to play him on the defensive line. Now coming to West Virginia for his redshirt senior season, he's back at his more natural position on the offensive line and really made some great strides there in the spring on the interior of West Virginia's offensive line. And at 6'4", 300 pounds, he'll be finishing out his collegiate career with the Mountaineers this season. And then we have one that's probably already a fan favorite, or definitely will be in name alone, right? But I think he has that hard edge mentality as well. Walter Youngbear, 6'3", 306-pound redshirt senior, comes to West Virginia from Tulsa. And I think, if anyone is maybe solidified in the starting lineup, I would maybe put Walter Youngbear as the most solidified that I think you'll see start as one of the guard positions. I think he's going to have a really good final season here at WVU. And then we have another redshirt senior, this one coming in more recently in Carson Lee, who is coming, from Mississippi State, but really played his career at Eastern Michigan. He was only at Mississippi State for the spring after spring football decides to depart and ends up here at WVU, where he will compete for that starting center job with Landon Livingston. I do believe he has a chance there. We'll see how that position battle pans out. It's one we'll be keeping an eye on for sure. 6'2", 327-pounder, ton of collegiate experience, and was very good during his time there at Eastern Michigan. So we're happy to have Carson Lee on the roster as well. And then, funny enough, one of the first pickups West Virginia had in the transfer portal in this last cycle was on the offensive line, and that was getting Mikel Clay to come over from North Alabama to WVU and join the roster, where he will play out, potentially his final season as well. He does have a red shirt available if they would choose to use it. He could redshirt this season and be back for one more year, but he does transfer up from the lower level there at North Alabama. 6'5", 278-pounder, and we'll see how he fits into the rotation this upcoming season as well. Which those are the seniors. Now let's go to our juniors, starting with redshirt junior Xavier Bosley, 6'4", 310-pound guy, which interestingly enough began his career where? at Jack State under Coach Rod and company there. So, funny enough, he came to WVU last season, a year before then, but now gets to reunite with his former coaching staff for his redshirt junior season. Of course, he is originally a West Virginia native from Dunbar there, played at South Charleston, so you like that aspect of his game, and he's someone that could very well be in the rotation. He was a freshman All-American in Jack State system when he was there, under Rich Rod's offense, so he knows the offense well. We'll see how quickly he can acclimate. He was dealing with an injury in the spring, I do believe. Hopefully that didn't set him back too far, but we like Xavier Bosley as well. And then how about the one offensive lineman that got to go to Big 12 Media Days? And, as I've been really high on Carson Lee at the center position. I think that's still going to be a good battle. But, Landon Livingston getting to go to Media Days, maybe that says something. And I think at the time that we have seen him play the center position some when he filled in last year for Brandon Yates, he filled in admirably. And I think he has a bright future. So I do like Landon Livingston. The 6'4", 294-pounder will compete for that starting job there at the center position during his redshirt junior season here. And then we've got another transfer. Like I said, a ton of fresh faces here on this roster. The next one that we got to mention here is Donovan Haslam, maybe the biggest, in size, as far as size is concerned, of the transfers that West Virginia brought in, as he goes 6'3", 341 pounds. The redshirt junior coming up, transferring up from Austin Peay as he joins the roster as well. And then how about another SEC transfer? Like I said, there's several of these on the roster that West Virginia has brought in. And I think this one's an interesting story as well in Malik Agbo, because he was kind of that swing offensive lineman for Texas last season. He would play, even like a bonus tight end when they would need him to at times, something that we had, one of our starting tackles last season do before he became a starting tackle. And, of course, I'm referencing Nick Malone there. And we saw how good of a season he had last year playing tackle after he'd kind of been used as, that swing man, kind of that bonus offensive lineman. And that's what Malik Agbo was used at Texas. And, if he's got the talent to get on the field at Texas like that, he definitely has a chance to compete for a starting job here at WVU, I do believe. 6'4", 270-pounder, redshirt junior, joins the roster and is going to be in that rotation on the offensive line. We'll see where he ends up. We'll talk about that momentarily in the projected pecking order. But, one guy that he may be competing with is one of the returners that, the previous coaching staff was pretty high on. It seems like the new coaching staff is high on as well. And that's Nick Cray, who has great size for a redshirt sophomore, 6'6", 305 pounds, originally or native of Pennsylvania. And I think, now you're getting to the point where it's time for him to, come into his own. Will he be a starter? I'm not sure, but he will have that opportunity. He's going to be a guy that's in the mix throughout fall camp, involved in a lot of these position battles on the offensive line. And I think Nick Cray is one to keep an eye on. And then we have Wyatt Minor, another redshirt sophomore. And it's another West Virginia native that's getting to, come back home to the Mountaineers and join the roster, be a part of this football team, which you saw when he originally committed to WVU. That was something that he was very excited about, and rightfully so. And you love a guy like that it means so much to. He's a Clarksburg native, played at Robert C. Byrd High School before, going to Youngstown State and playing his first, 2 seasons or so. And now he gets to come back to WVU for his redshirt sophomore season and hopefully beyond. At 6'5", 308, we have Wyatt Minor on the roster as well. Then we have another returner here in Cooper Young that will be back for his redshirt sophomore season with West Virginia. Few and far between offensive linemen that stuck around, but Cooper Young is one of those that did just that. 6'5", 308-pounder. We'll see if he can make his way into the rotation as well. But someone that I think certainly will be involved in the rotation is another SEC transfer. I told you guys there was plenty of these. This one came in the most recent cycle, coming from Tennessee, and that is Aiden Bussell, who I'm really excited to have on this roster, especially with the ability that he still has to progress throughout his career. I think he'll, try and factor into these position battles, right away at 6'5", 309 pounds. He has that SEC pedigree. He was highly regarded coming out of high school, and the fact that he's now a Mountaineer is certainly a positive sign for us as Mountaineer fans, because I think he's going to be a really good offensive lineman throughout his career. And then, how about Robbie Martin coming back to WVU? Of course, he came in that initial transfer portal window, coming to West Virginia for his redshirt freshman season. We may not gotten the chance to get him out of high school. They're coming from Huntington. He went to NC State, but now he is a Mountaineer, and hopefully he'll get to develop throughout his career here. Still young as a redshirt freshman, so plenty of time for him to develop. We'll see where West Virginia chooses to use him throughout his career. I would not be surprised to see him eventually be the center for the Mountaineers, as you have Carson Lee and Livingston there, a senior and a junior. He could be the one that's the next man up there. So we'll keep an eye on Robbie Martin throughout his career, an in-state native that could have a positive career by the time it's all said and done here at WVU. And then we get to these freshmen and redshirt freshmen at the bottom. There are a couple of these, or at least one of these, that I think could be involved in the rotation. But as far as some of these others, we'll get to guys like Raymond Kovaleski here, who, is rounding out the roster. I don't technically think you have, quote unquote walk-ons anymore, preferred walk-ons, but if you did, he would be one that was kind of involved in that camp in Raymond Kovaleski. But you can never have too many offensive line bodies on the roster. And we've also seen guys of that ilk go on to have really good careers as they progress and develop. So maybe Raymond Kovaleski will be able to pull that off as well. 6'3", 267 right now. He needs some time to develop. And the same can probably be said for Griffin Fogel as well, a fellow redshirt freshman along that offensive line that hopes to develop throughout his career here at WVU, and we hope he does that as well as Mountaineer fans, right? 6'3", 300 pounds, a native of Ohio is Griffin Fogel. Then we have Andreas Hunter. He'll be wearing number 73 for the Mountaineers this year. Another redshirt freshman that's on the roster. He's a bit bigger, 6'5", 301, but one of those in-state players that West Virginia has added and hopes to develop over time from Glendale, West Virginia, is Andreas Hunter. And then the final redshirt freshman that we have to talk about here is the one that I feel like may have a chance to work into the rotation, and that's Josh Isosa, who's going to be an interior offensive lineman. He was at Oklahoma, so there you go, another SEC transfer on this offensive line for West Virginia. He could play guard, he could play center. We'll see what happens throughout his career. I believe he'll start at guard, but coming in as a redshirt freshman, he's got the SEC pedigree, and he has great size at 6'3", 321. If any of these freshmen work their way into the rotation, I think Josh Isosa could be the one. More on that momentarily. And then we have our true freshman that we've added, right? Brandon Homedy, he was here for the spring, so we know a little bit about him already as he's been on the roster since then. The other two, of course, coming in a little bit later that we're going to talk about momentarily. Brandon Homedy here out of Ohio, 6'3", 293 here for his freshman season. And then we most recently added Philip Bowser, who will be wearing number 62 for the Mountaineers this upcoming season, also out of Ohio, currently 6'4", 273. And then one more West Virginia native in Trevor Bigelow out of Fairmont, 6'4", 267. Both of those guys likely headed for a red shirt. Actually, probably all three of those guys headed for a red shirt, as most offensive linemen do. It's very rare to see someone come in and play as a true freshman on the offensive line. So those guys will take some time to develop, and we'll see where they end up throughout their career. But now that you know all of the names that are in play at the offensive line position, let's break this down with a pecking order where I can kind of get into this position by position: left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle. And I'm going to show you guys the way that I potentially see this shaking out for this upcoming season and kind of the 11 or 12 names that I think will probably be in the rotation for West Virginia on the offensive line. All right, and so I figured this would be the easiest way to showcase this. I hadn't broken these down by position yet. I think Malik Ogbo is going to play tackle. He could very well play guard, but I think his quickest way onto the field is at left tackle, where he's probably going to compete for a starting job with some other guys that are here. I have him right now penciled in as the first stringer for me. I think he's got the type of talent to be able to do that. So I think at left tackle, the guys that you'll see here is Malik Ogbo, and he'll be competing with Nick Cray. I think one of those two will likely be, your starter, but we can't rule out Donovan Haslam as well, coming up from Austin Peay. Great size for him. We'll see where he ends up on that line, but I went ahead and threw him in here at the tackle spot. I think, the tackle spot and the center spot are probably your most interesting competitions to keep an eye on throughout fall camp. I think the guards may be a little bit more solidified. We'll see how that shakes out, though, but at left tackle, I got Malik Ogbo and then Nick Cray or Donovan Haslam. Then at left guard, as I stated, I think maybe more solidified than anyone. I think Walter Youngbear will be your starter at that position. Behind him, you see, I have the redshirt freshman Josh Isosa. I think he could be in the rotation there at the guard position. But the caveat for me there is if Ogbo ends up losing the battle and doesn't start at left tackle, I think he very well could be a swing guy that plays on your left side of the line, either at guard or tackle, if you need somebody to come in at a pinch, because you're going to kind of have your best guys there and try and get your best five at any given time, whether that be having to make some switches due to injury or anything like that. I think you're going to try and find your best guys. And I think Malik Ogbo is going to be one of those. Just depends on where he fits. But if not, Josh Isosa is someone to keep in mind, someone with a bright future. And then at center, I told you guys the two players that are there, and you guys kind of already knew this already. Landon Livingston and Carson Lee are going to battle it out for that starting spot. For now, I think Livingston may be your starter with Lee as the second stringer, but we'll see how it pans out. Then at right guard, this might be a battle in fall camp, but I really do like Kimo Makaneole, so I'm going to give him the edge for now. But don't count out Aiden Bussell finding a spot somewhere in this rotation on the offensive line. I've got him behind Kimo Makaneole at the right guard spot, which brings us to right tackle, where for now, I think Tykees Crawford will continue to hold down one of the starting tackle spots. And then behind him, it'll be interesting to see if Xavier Bosley, with his experience with the Jack State system, if he's healthy, can he lock down, a spot on the two deep, or Mikael Clay that they brought up from North Alabama. They really liked him a lot. He was one of the first offensive line transfers they brought in, so I expect him to be in the rotation. But all in all, guys, I think I have 12 names here, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that these 12 names are going to be the 12 most likely that you see in the rotation. I know we went through a lot of names there across the offensive line, but I think that these are the main guys to keep an eye on as far as rotation is concerned, as far as the most likely guys you'll see playing on the offensive line for West Virginia this upcoming season. I think these 12 names are kind of your top 12, and we'll see how they shake out once we get into fall camp. That's the way that I see it now with my projected pecking order for the offensive line here as we wrap up our offensive line position preview on the Country Roads webcast. But that's just the way I see things shaking out up front. Maybe you have a different opinion, and that's cool. Let me know it in the comments. I'd love to hear the way you see it shaking out with some of these position battles. It's going to be interesting to see because this offensive line, of course, is completely remade, completely revamped, a lot of new faces. Somebody could end up somewhere different, but that's kind of the way I see it here as we get close to approaching fall camp. But would love to hear your opinions as well. Drop them in the comments. We appreciate those interactions as we continue to try and grow the CRW community throughout Mountaineer Nation. Having said that, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go, Mountaineers.